Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The world didn't fade to black when I fell. It shattered into a kaleidoscope of blinding studio lights and terrified screams, the concrete floor rushing up to meet my face with the velocity of a freight train. 1 second, I was standing on the precarious edge of the rotating platform, my lungs burning like they were filled with crushed glass, forcing a smile for the camera that I knew didn't reach my eyes. The next, gravity betrayed me. But before the darkness could fully swallow me, before the producer could even yell cut, I heard a sound that terrified me more than the impending impact. It was the sound of a heavy oak table being kicked over, followed by the feral, uninhibited roar of a man who had spent a lifetime perfecting his composure, only to shatter it in a single heartbeat. The film emperor, the man who was supposed to be a stranger to me on this stage, had moved. And God help anyone who stood in his way. To understand why the entire entertainment industry held its breath that night, you have to understand the lie we were living. My name is Rin Jiehua. To the public, I am the visual center of the idol group Starlight, a pretty vase, with a mediocre singing voice and a desperate need to transition into serious acting. To the industry, I am a commodity, something to be used for ratings, pushed to the limit in physical variety shows until I break, all for the amusement of the audience. And then there is Kieran Vane. Kieran is not just an actor. In the Asian entertainment sphere, he is a deity. At 28, he is the youngest triple gold winner in history. He is known for his icy demeanor, his absolute professionalism, and a gaze so intense it can supposedly strip a person's soul bare through a camera lens. He is untouchable. He is the sun to my candle. He is also the man whose ring was currently burning a hole in the pocket of my jeans, hidden deep within my locker backstage. We had been married for 2 years. 2 years of shadows, of stolen kisses in blacked-out SUVs, of pretending to be polite strangers at award galas. The clause in my contract was ironclad. Asterisk no dating. No scandals. Asterisk and Kieran's management was even stricter. If the world knew the Ice Emperor was married to a B-list idol struggling to prove his worth, the backlash would destroy my career before it even truly began. I refused to be the stain on his pristine reputation. I refused to be known only as Kieran's husband. So I worked. I worked until my bones ached and my vision blurred. Which brought me to the Iron Will, the most brutal variety show on television. Are you insane? Kieran had asked me 2 nights ago, his voice low and dangerous in the quiet of our penthouse. He was gripping a glass of whiskey, his knuckles white. Run, look at the roster. They have Olympic athletes on that show. You're recovering from a flu. You're barely eating. I need the exposure. Kieran, I had argued, buttoning my shirt, refusing to look at the pain in his eyes. Director Han watches this show. If I show grit, if I show I'm not just a pretty face, I might get an audition for his noir film. I can get you the audition, Kieran snapped, stepping closer, his scent of sandalwood and cold rain enveloping me. No, I pulled away. That's exactly what I don't want. I need to do this myself. Please. If you love me, let me fight my own battles. He had stared at me for a long time, the silence stretching taut between us. Finally, he sighed, a sound of defeated surrender. Fine, but I'm accepting the guest judge invitation. My head snapped up. What? If you're going into the lion's den, I'm going to be the one holding the whip, he said, his tone final. But run. Do not push me. If I see you in danger, to hell with the cameras. To hell with the secret. I thought he was bluffing. Kieran Vane was the ultimate professional. He would never risk his empire for a moment of panic. I was wrong. The filming set for the Iron Will was a massive warehouse converted into a dystopian obstacle course. The air smelled of damp earth, sweat, and ozone. The concept for this episode was survival of the fittest. The first 3 hours were grueling. We dragged tires through mud, climbed sheer walls while blasted with water cannons, and memorized complex scripts while suspended in midair. I was doing well, fueled by adrenaline and the burning desire to prove the haters wrong. Every time I completed a challenge, I glanced toward the judges' tribunal, high above the arena. Kieran sat there on a velvet throne, looking like a king presiding over an execution. He wore a sharp, 3-piece charcoal suit that cost more than my parents' house. His legs were crossed, his expression impassive, cold as marble. He offered scathing critiques to the other contestants, his words sharp and precise. When it was my turn to be critiqued after the mud crawl, he didn't even look at his notes. He looked straight at me. "Your breathing is erratic, contestant Run," he said, his voice amplified by the speakers, smooth and deep. "Your form is sloppy. Are you sure you belong here? Or should you go back to lip-syncing on a glittery stage?" The audience gasped. It was brutal. It was mean. But I knew him. I saw the way his hand gripped the pen until it nearly snapped. I saw the microscopic tightening of his jaw. He was angry, not at my performance, but at the bruise forming on my cheek, at the way my hands were trembling. He was trying to goad me into quitting. He was playing the villain to save me. "I belong here," I grit out, staring right back at him. "And I'll prove it." Kieran's eyes darkened. "Then proceed to the final stage." The final stage was notorious. The breathless tank. It involved being submerged in a glass tank of water up to the neck while holding weights. The water temperature was near freezing. The goal was to endure for 10 minutes while answering trivia questions. If you got one wrong, the water level rose. I was the last to go. I was already exhausted. My limbs felt like lead, and the lingering fatigue from my flu was creeping back, a cold numbness spreading from my marrow outward. I stepped into the tank. The cold was a physical blow, shocking the air from my lungs. I gritted my teeth, gripping the weights. "Timer starts now," the host announced cheerfully. The first 5 minutes were a blur. I answered the questions mechanically. Asterisk capital of Peru? Lima. Chemical symbol for gold? Oh, asterisk, but the cold was seeping into my core. My vision began to tunnel. The bright studio lights overhead started to streak, leaving trails of light like comets. I looked up at the judge's stand. Kieran was leaning forward now, his mask of indifference cracking. He wasn't looking at the camera. He was looking at my lips, which I knew were turning blue. "Stop," his eyes seemed to scream. "Get out." I shook my head imperceptibly. "Not yet. Question 7, the host boomed. "In Shakespeare's Macbeth, who kills the king?" My brain was sluggish. The words swam. I opened my mouth, but only a chatter of teeth came out. The water rose. It was at my chin now. I needed to focus. Just 3 more minutes. I could do this. I had to do this. If I won, I wasn't just an idol. I was strong. I was worthy of him. But my body had reached its limit. The sudden spike in my heart rate triggered the alarms on the biometric monitor strapped to my chest. The loud beep 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 echoed through the studio. "His heart rate is spiking to 180, someone yelled. I tried to lift the weights, but my hands simply opened. The heavy iron plates splashed into the water. The sound was deafening in my ears. The water rushed into my mouth, tasting of chlorine and fear. I tried to stand, to signal I was done, but my legs were gone. The world tilted. The screams of the fans warped into a low, demonic groan. "I'm sorry, Kieran," I thought, as the darkness rushed in. I failed, and then I fell. Consciousness returned in fragments. First, there was warmth. A suffocating, desperate warmth wrapping around me. Then, there was the smell. Sandalwood, expensive cologne, and the metallic tang of terror. Finally, the sound. "If you don't get that camera out of my face in the next 3 seconds, I will buy this network and burn it to the ground." The voice was a roar, raw and terrifying. It vibrated through the chest I was pressed against. I forced my heavy eyelids open. The world was a blur of motion. I wasn't in the tank anymore. I was being carried. I looked up. Kieran's face was inches from mine, but it was a face I had never seen in public. The Ice Emperor was gone. In his place was a man possessed. His perfect hair was disheveled, strands falling over his forehead. His eyes were wide, frantic, burning with a mix of murderous rage and agonizing fear. He was sweating. He was carrying me bridal style, striding through the backstage corridors, kicking doors open with a violence that made the staff scramble out of his way like rats fleeing a fire. "Kieran," I croaked, my voice barely a whisper. He froze. He looked down, and the pure devastation in his eyes broke my heart. "I've got you," he choked out, his voice cracking. "I've got you, Ren. Don't speak. Save your breath." "The show," I mumbled, trying to struggle. "The cameras." "Fuck the show," he yelled, his voice echoing off the concrete walls. He pulled me tighter against his chest, as if trying to merge our bodies into one. You stopped breathing, Run. You stopped breathing for 10 seconds. He kicked open the door to his private dressing room and slammed it shut with his foot, locking it. He didn't put me on the couch. He sat down on it and kept me in his lap, burying his face in the crook of my neck. He was trembling. The great Kieran Vane was shaking like a leaf. Kieran, I'm okay, I whispered, reaching up to touch his hair. My hand was still cold, shaking. He grabbed my hand and pressed it to his lips, kissing the frozen knuckles, then my wrist, checking my pulse frantically. You are not okay, he hissed, lifting his head. His eyes were red-rimmed. I watched you drown. I sat there and watched you drown because you wanted to prove a point. I wanted to be worthy, I said, tears pricking my eyes. I didn't want to be the weak one anymore. Worthy? Kieran laughed, a dark, humorless sound. He gripped my chin, forcing me to look at him. Do you think I married you for your strength? Do you think I care about your career or your reputation or any of this damn industry? You care about perfection, I countered weakly. I care about you, he roared, the sound filling the small room. I fell in love with Run, the man who cries at cat commercials and burns toast. I didn't marry an actor. I married my soulmate. And I almost lost you today. He rested his forehead against mine, his breathing ragged. When you went under. When the monitor flatlined for that second. My world ended, Ren. Logic didn't exist. The contract didn't exist. I jumped 20 feet from that platform. I think I broke the producer's nose. I don't care. I don't care if the whole world knows. Let them cancel me. Let them sue me. I am not letting you go. I stared at him, stunned. The realization washed over me warmer than the blankets he was now wrapping around me. He had destroyed the masquerade. He had outed himself, outed us, in the most dramatic way possible. There was no spinning a narrative where the film emperor leaps from a balcony to cradle a junior idol, screaming threats at the crew. You really broke the producer's nose? I asked, a small, hysterical giggle escaping me. Kieran let out a long, shaky breath, finally leaning back against the couch cushions, pulling me securely against his chest. He began to rub my cold arms, generating friction, his touch possessive and desperate. He wouldn't cut the feed, Kieran muttered darkly. He wanted a reaction shot. I gave him one. It's going to be a scandal, I whispered, resting my head on his shoulder. Twitter is probably melting down. Let it melt, Kieran said, his voice dropping to that low, dangerous register that usually sent shivers down my spine. But now, it just made me feel safe. My legal team is already issuing cease and desists. My PR team is spinning a narrative about minorship and medical emergency, but I don't care if it sticks. From now on, things change. He pulled back to look me in the eye. No more dangerous shows. No more hiding when you're sick. If you want to act, you act. I will fund the movie myself if I have to. But you are never, ever putting yourself in danger to prove your worth to me again. Do you understand? It wasn't a question. It was a command from the Emperor. But beneath the command, I heard the plea. Asterisk, please stay alive. Please stay with me. Asterisk, I looked at the man who had burned down his own fortress of solitude just to pull me from the water. I saw the love that terrified him, the love he had kept hidden in the dark for so long. Okay, I whispered. I understand. Kieran closed his eyes and kissed me. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was hard, bruising, and tasted of salt and whiskey. It was a kiss that claimed me, marking me as his territory, his life, his breath. Good, he murmured against my lips. Now stay here. I'm going to get the car. If anyone tries to come in with a camera, you'll burn the building down? I suggested with a weak smile. Kieran stood up, buttoning his ruined suit jacket, his composure returning like a suit of armor, but his eyes remaining soft only for me. No, he said, opening the door and glaring at the terrified production assistants huddled in the hallway. I won't have to. They already know who the monster is. He turned back to me, a smirk playing on his lips. Rest, my love. We have a lot of headlines to ignore tomorrow. And as he stepped out to face the chaos he had created, I realized that I hadn't just survived the variety show. I had survived the fall. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of the landing. Because the Emperor wasn't watching from a throne anymore. He was right there in the mud with me, ready to tear the world apart if it dared to touch what was his. And that is how the Emperor fell from grace to catch his star. If you enjoyed seeing Kieran destroy everything for love, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you risk your entire career to save the person you love, or is the price of fame too high? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then,